Welcome back, guys, to the lounge. As always, you're going to have myself here, Steve, joined by my wonderful companion, Eric Wilfred Watson.
Happy to be here. Happy to have a cocktail in my hand, and I'm happy to talk about shit on YouTube.
Stuff on the internet. It's a great thing that we live in a world where we can just talk about our random bullshit opinions on things when we have, like, no merit to ourselves whatsoever. And you guys tune into it willingly. That's really kind of the messed up part when you think about it.
Our credentials are that we have a pulse, and therefore we have opinions. And we have the ability to share our opinions. And I have a microphone, which means you're going to listen to what I have to say.
Whether you want to or not. Well, I suppose
theoretically you want to if you're here. And we're going to talk about something kind of interesting today, I think.
We are. This is actually something that we were just randomly talking about it in a lot of the other types of episodes that we've done in the past and whatnot. I feel like have kind of culminated to this. And we did one similar to this with Batman, I think, where we talked about some of the different gizmos and whatnot. But today, we're going to talk about sci-fi gadgets and sci-fi weapons that we've seen, be it in video games and movies, that for us just resonate as being some of our favorite toys that we've seen. Eric, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Well, everybody loves lightsabers. I mean, there's no logical science to why the blade would stop at a certain point. That's always kind of fascinating me. It's like it shoots up light but then stops. How does that happen? But
right.
I mean, how iconic is that?
An elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
I mean, it's instantly both science fiction and sword and sorcery fantasy at the same time. It's just a beautiful mesh of fantasy and science fiction. So iconic. And every kid in the universe loves lightsabers. My kid doesn't even really watch Star Wars. He's 6 years old. But my goodness, does he love to have lightsaber fights.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not going to lie. That's not the one I was going to take that one. He stole my answer, guys. I think kind of leading off of that, I've always liked the idea of space fighters. Like, fighter craft. I think that it, and I know it's not necessarily super sci-fi in that. I mean, I suppose it is. You got something that's, blasting lasers out of it and whatnot, but yeah. I've always loved fighter jets and whatnot here in the real world. So seeing that implemented in space and like the maneuvers and whatnot they have, I think has always just been really cool. And like I was thinking of like a Formula One driver that was given a targeting button, just with how fast you see those things zip around. I've always just loved it.
Yeah, you kind of have to turn off your brain a little bit because in real science, if a starship isn't going to bank like this,
right,
it would take a lot of energy. Because inertia in space, once it's going a certain direction, it's going to stay going that direction. It would take an awful lot of energy to have a ship just go back and forth like that.
Right.
It'd be more efficient if they're just doing a circle.
Yep.
But it looks cool, and your brain kind of inputs, in atmosphere dogfights that you've seen. And I know George Lucas watched a lot of old World War II footage when he was coming up with Star Wars, so it's logical that they would have that. And of course, there's no sound in space either, but I don't care. I like my explosions in space. I like hearing the pew pew pew.
Yep.
It's just fun. I mean, it's fantasy. You could call it science fiction, but it's really fantasy because science fiction is more like this could possibly be real.
For sure.
But in Star Wars, it's just total fantasy with a sci-fi paint job.
For sure.
Which is a good thing, I think. I love it.
No, I definitely agree. The last bit that I'll add onto that, because I had a guy I used to work with, and he would get on this soapbox every time he would watch Star Wars or hear someone talk about Star Wars. Not only is there no sound in space, there's no oxygen in space for the explosions to happen. You shouldn't be seeing these balls of fire just erupt. And he would get red in the face. Just like, that shouldn't be happening! And it's like, dude, stop.
Actually, that doesn't bother me so much because theoretically, obviously there's going to be oxygen in the ship. And if those oxygen tanks explode, there's going to be another concentrated oxygen there, and it'll just fizzle out as it goes into the vacuum.
Ooh.
It wouldn't continue to burn.
See, there we go. He's a smart person there. You're up next.
There's a sci-fi bullshit excuse for everything. Energy weapons.
Fair.
Every science fiction thing in the future has to have its pew-pew. They call them blasters in Star Wars. They call them phasers in Star Trek. But just the handheld energy weapon that just sizzles a hole into people or disintegrates them or either knocks them out or just completely makes them poof out of existence. And, Yeah, just fun.
It's always fun with those, depending on the film that you're watching, when you can get a good, like, because in Star Wars, it looks like a burn mark initially. But if you get a good one that kind of goes a little bit more PG-13 or a little bit further, where you see the hole and it's just like instantly carterized as well. So that's what I want to see. There's no bleeding involved. It's just the instantly. I'm going to rein back in. I'm going to come back down to earth. And one of my favorite gizmos, I think I've seen, this one was in a video game, was from Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. And they had this really cool breaching mechanism that you put on, and you put it on before your breaching mechanism. It was a mute charge. So you'd put this thing on the door, you'd clamp or whatever, turn it on, and it had this bubble that would expand, and it would completely cancel out any noise that was happening within that bubble. So then they could send off a C4 charge, and no one was none the wiser. It was just completely
that's neat.
Just dead noise.
Well, speaking of noise, when it comes to it, going back to the handheld weapons, I always thought it was weird that they make a noise, because a laser doesn't make a noise.
Fair.
Why does it make a noise? And I asked on my other channel, my buddy Hugh Frank, he's like, well, think about it like a bolt of lightning. The air crashes, so that's what the sound is. Like, yeah, but then why does it go? That's not the
right.
In my own novel, Death Siren, I thought it was. I kind of like deconstructed Sci-Fi a little bit in a couple places in there. The energy weapons make no noise whatsoever.
Oh.
So when they fire the weapon and it hits a person, you can hear their flesh dissolving.
Okay.
That's the only sound you hear. And I thought, how awesome and sick would that be?
Well, that'd be horrifying. Ooh. I mean, I love it, but that's horrifying to think about. It'd be such a quiet battle. People are all screaming, and you're hearing, like, the flesh go. But, like, all in all, the battle itself is very quiet. There's just, like, you could hear a pin drop. I'm going to go with a classic on this one. I want to talk about a neuralizer. Men in Black. Good old... Yeah.
I am just a figment of your imagination.
Tell me there is not a 90s kid out there that, like, when they would change the toilet paper roll, wasn't taking that sucker and, like, walking up to their mom or their dad and be like, I cleaned my room. Bing! Like, or whatever the case is. Like, that was a cool piece, just instant memory wipes.
Oh, yeah, and they have one built into the Statue of Liberty, and they wipe out the entire city of New York in one shot. I thought if I was in charge of making those movies and I had the sequel and I had the rights to it, I would... the cameo that would have been fantastic that they didn't do is if they just were panning the camera and they had Scully and Mulder standing there, or the actors that play them, maybe not even name them, just flash and then move on to the next scene without even acknowledging it in dialogue. Just have those two actors there.
That would have been funny. What's your next pick?
Well, I want to talk more about Star Trek because obviously I'm a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, naturally.
In Star Trek Discovery, some people hate the show. Some people like the show. It's kind of controversial among Star Trek fans, but you don't know anything about it. So the 2-second version is it takes place around the Captain Kirk era a little bit before that, but they jump forward 1,000 years due to story reasons, and the latter seasons take place like over 1,000 years in the future. So they update all the technology from what we've seen in old Star Trek. And there's a couple weapons in that far future that are really fucking cool. And one of them is one that one of the bad guys has, which is like a phaser that looks like it fucking hurts. It's got like a rectangular shape to it, and it emits this beam that it doesn't have a stun or kill setting exactly. It's just a matter of how long are you being shot with it. If you just zap somebody with it, that'll knock them down. But if you want to kill them, you just continuously fire this thing at them until until their flesh melts off and their skeleton. And the guy's like screaming in pain as they're being shot with this thing. I'm like, holy fuck, that's brutal. I love it. Totally underutilized in the show. They didn't come back to that enough. But I just thought that was great. And they have these like handheld fist cannons, so they have like the phaser built into it, and they have like a replicator built into their suit, so they just like pull their hand up and the phaser materializes in their hand automatically. I thought that was pretty badass. A lot of stuff about Star Trek Discovery just fucking sucked, but I liked the tech.
I'm actually glad that you brought that up with like the things materializing. That's always been a favorite thing of mine, whether it was like in characters like Cyborg, whether with like DC, and any cartoons, Blue Beetle I know had it too. But when you can have something that is just kind of like reads your mind or has a neural link of some sort, and it materializes what you're thinking or what that object is, I think that's really cool. And you can chalk it up to nanotech, you can chalk it up to, I mean, whatever. But that's always been something that's been really cool for me to see.
And the hard part about science fiction now is we're
Where's the
we're
line?
getting so advanced that it's hard to okay, what's more advanced than possible now?
Yep.
And nothing seems impossible anymore.
Correct.
Like I remember people talking about the automatic doors in the old Star Trek.
Yep.
It's, I can believe people going in space, but a door that opens by itself?
Absolutely not.
Let's talk a little bit about what are spaceships.
Okay.
When you get to science fiction tech, so you have the artificial gravity, or you have like the space stations where people like in 2001, it's like centrifugal force.
Yep.
You have to have enough magical bullshit to make it work. Like everybody knows that there's no gravity in space.
Correct.
But people are all walking around.
Yep.
Yeah, that's practical. I mean, it's easier to film. But what are some of your favorite examples of like space travel and how that's handled?
Ooh, I think. So the blanket answer is I love the hyperspace travel that Star Wars has done, and I think at its core that's just kind of what I've grown up on. That's where my heart is, right? But I think the coolest detail that I ever saw was you have things like your hyperdrives and whatnot on your bigger ships, the Millennium Falcon and like bigger, where it's just built in, right? But in Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to different planets, and he has this small little single-person Jedi interceptor that he's in, and he has to actually link up to a bigger hyperdrive thing.
Yes.
It's like this like sphere that he locks into so that it can do hyperdrive. I thought that was a cool little detail to say like, hey, this ship is not meant to do that on its own. We got to put an attachment to it. But I think
Accessorize your starship.
you got to accessorize, man. I think that the blanket answer for me is I love the hyperspace travel in Star Wars.
Well, there's two aspects. I mean, is it hard science fiction where they're really trying to explain how it works, or is it just a bullshit magic device that just does what you need it to do? In Star Wars, it's the latter, and that's a good thing. You need to go to this planet, you fly in hyperspace, you're at that planet. Star Trek is sort of halfway in between. They try to explain it, but it's still... How fast is Warp 8? Nobody knows. It's just really fucking fast. How long does it take to get from this planet to that planet? It depends on what the screenwriters need.
Right.
You know? But Firefly, I love how they do it. They just basically... When
Rest
they're
in
trying to
peace,
explain,
Firefly.
When they're trying to explain the engines, they just say, well, if we burn hard enough, we might get there in so much time. They never really explain how it works.
Okay.
They like parts and components, but they never sit down like, this is how the spaceship works. They don't do that.
For sure.
And I don't do that in my own book either. In Death Siren, the ships just go.
Yep.
I use some magical bullshit science fiction words to describe it, but I don't really go into the technical specifics. For one, I'm not a scientist, I get it wrong. But number two, that's not really what the story's about.
Right.
It's really just, it services the story. And it's the aesthetics of some of them. Does it look cool or not?
Yep.
Is it fun?
Yep.
That's what I like.
Oh, I totally agree. So then the part that I would say, and I think where I initially thought your question was going to go to, is talking about sci-fi spaceships and whatnot. Do you have a specific example of a spacecraft that is like your favorite? Like this is like if I could have one right now, this is the one I would have for my own personal use.
Oh, I would. I love the Next Generation Enterprise.
Okay.
It's just sleek. It doesn't look complicated. It's a nice design. The floors are carpeted. They have a holodeck. The quarters look nice. You get nice, comfy couches.
Yep.
Everything runs smoothly. They have a bar.
There we go. That's it right there. We have the bar. Okay, that's fair. Mine would be a toss-up between two ships. On the one hand, and I'm going back to Star Wars with this. On the one hand, it would either be the Jedi interceptors that Obi-Wan and Anakin had in the beginning of Episode 3. It's got this little like kind of bubble dome, and it's got these very short little wings and a couple of blasters out front. But it's very small, super maneuverable. I've always liked those kind of fighters. Like maybe it's not the most armored thing in the world, but it's fast and it's very agile. I think a very close contender, and I would actually say probably the one I would give the most times to, is Boba/Jango Fett's Slave One.
Yeah.
I think is the most iconic ship out there. The noise it makes with the blasters, and for anyone that's ever watched it out there from Episode 2, those seismic charges.
Those are cool.
Those hit my sweet spot for being as part of the spaceship and one of my favorite weapons. I mean, again, iconic when that thing drops and it's mute and then just boing. whoever made that or greenlit the concept for that, you're an amazing person.
Another thing to consider is, do you live on the spaceship or is it just your vehicle?
That's fair.
Because if it's just like, is it a sports car or is it a cruise ship? I mean, my answer
fair.
is kind of like, where would I like to live?
Yep.
I'd like to have good quarters on the Enterprise and just have everything for free and just, take me to planet. That'd be great.
Back to the bar.
But if it's just my own little fighter or my own little, like, I don't live on the ship, but I want it to be cool, I'd probably take the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. Well, and that's got the quarters where you could do an extended
That's an
camping
RV.
trip.
Spaceballs got it right. It's an RV.
It is, yes. Absolutely.
No, I take that back. That's the ship I want. Just
Falcon?
the Spaceballs RV. That's what I want. Forget my last answers. I want that.
I love it. What do you got for any closing thoughts? Any last honorable mentions for tech?
Well, Batman. He just comes. It's not really science fiction, but it comes pretty close.
It's close.
Like in the Batman, the little eyepiece, it does a little bit more than like a real. I mean, it's not unheard of that you think a technology could exist that could record like that, but it's a little bit further beyond what's possible.
Yep.
And I like the Batman computer just a little bit further from what's possible now.
Yep.
I think that's cool. The comic booky tech.
That's fair. That's fair. I can definitely respect that. I love that you brought it back to Batman too. And you know what's... Yeah, man. I mean, Batman really will bring a lot of that home. I think if I had to throw one more out there, and again, it's skirting the line really close with like things that are doable now and whatnot like that. But I think any time that I have seen a decent sized like exosuit, not like one of the skeletons are like, oh, I can lift a box. Like one of the like Matrix style, get in and this thing is a thing.
Oh yeah,
like Titanfall.
You're basically wearing a robot as an outfit. Yeah.
Those are cool to me. I mean, you've got this lid comes down and now your viewport is screens, and I mean, it's just, those things are just really cool to me. I think it's just far enough outside of the realm of reality. And I think the part of that is it's like, I have no doubt that we have those things, or that could have those things, but they don't move the way that those things move.
Lex Luthor has like a robot Superman suit.
Yes.
That's basically Iron Man.
Yep.
The wearable technology like that. Iron Man, the asshole guy in Avatar had a robot suit.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. That's very common in anime.
Yep. Oh, very much so. How did I not touch on Iron Man? Anything Tony Stark has built, I love as far as the sci-fi stuff goes. Yep. But I mean, anyway, I could go on about this absolutely all day long. Guys, make sure that you give this video a like, share this video. Make sure you also comment down in the bottom maybe some of your favorite sci-fi gizmos, gadgets, weaponry, spaceships. We want to hear what are your guys' favorites. Please hit that subscribe button, click the bell so you can be notified the next time that a few very, very qualified individuals have something to say. But until next time, guys, cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for stopping by the Reaction Lounge.